Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. This week's lesson is looking at how language can directly affect you, not only your language, but other people's. This week's lesson shows that talk, even idle talk, or mouthing off about someone or something, is fertile ground. It can spread very quickly, quicker than any virus, and quickly become truth in many people's minds. And this is something that in language learning you need to be very aware of. All it takes is someone in your class saying, well, that teacher's good, but in this particular way, I don't like him. And it spreads quicker than any virus. The next thing you know, the teacher is fired. Now, I'm not just talking about teachers here and students, and there may be perhaps some truth in what the person is saying. However, sometimes, particularly in offices and in teams, one simple comment can be taken completely out of context, lead to serious problems further down the line. In language learning, it's the same. When you see that you're not doing as well as the next person, or that there's someone else in the class who appears to know more, then often we begin comparing ourselves. Why is my English not the same as hers? It must be because the teacher likes that person more, or it must be something that's wrong. Well, there might not even be an issue. It may just be related to how you learn or how you study. It might not even be true, the whole situation, that someone else has better English than you. The problem is, once you start voicing this kind of thing, then it can become problematic for other people. And worse than that, when you self-talk yourself, convincing yourself that you can't do something, then you probably won't be able to do it, and you'll be looking for someone to blame. And even if you don't tell anyone, you've already created a mental atmosphere, a belief about something. And that will be there and present in the classroom. If you think that you've got a problem with the teacher, then ultimately it's going to show in everything that you try to do. So how do we deal with these things? Well, there's a couple of ways. One way to deal with it is to deal with the wrong opinion or idea or belief itself. Talk to the teacher that you're having an issue with. Try to find someone to talk it out with. Try to deal with the problem before it festers. Fester is a word we use to describe an illness, particularly a cut on your hand or a physical injury which becomes infected. When it becomes infected, we call that festering. And if something festers, it can become very serious and would need urgent attention. That's just a little bit of guidance today on how you should really protect your thinking and your ideas. If something comes up that indicates there's a problem with your learning, then you really need to talk it out with someone or deal with it quickly. If you don't deal with it in the first moment that this idea comes up, it will take you in the second moment, and it will be much harder to escape from it. Of course, there may be some real problems you're dealing with in language learning today, but it's important that you deal with those problems pretty much immediately. A problem with your colleague, a problem in your team, a problem with your boss. Don't hang on to it. Deal with it in order to move on. Because once it gets bigger and starts to spread, it's a bit like a virus. Next thing you know, everybody is seeing it. Well, there's a story in the news today, which is The Guardian, and this is the 15th of October, that says ministers to consider law forcing social media to protect under 16s. Now, this is kind of related to what we're talking about because the government and many others think that there's too much fake news. To make it countable, too many fake news stories going around, and that kids under 16 should be protected. But of course, as always, the government isn't trying to stop the fake news, it's just trying to block access for young people seeing it. And they're also, at the same time, trying to push through a law which would block mobile phones in all schools in England. And that's really gaining momentum. It means that that's speeding up and getting a lot of support. But let's have a look and see what it says here. This is today's story from The Guardian. It says, social media companies could be forced to exclude young teenagers from algorithms to make content less addictive for under 16s under a new bill with backing from all of the major political parties, as well as child protection experts. As you know, when a new law is coming in, before it becomes law, it's called a bill. So this is called the Safer Phones Bill. It's coming from our government. They're the ones that are suggesting it, and it has high priority in Parliament. It would also mean that the government will review the sale of phones to teenagers and whether they will be allowed to buy telephones if they're under 16. Apparently, the government ministers are very open-minded about how this might work. And it will begin to be discussed tomorrow, and it will come back again in January to see whether it can go ahead. And it does say here, even though these bills don't usually pass in their original form, this one is being given lots of parliamentary time to be discussed. It's very interesting, isn't it? It says here, evidence is mounting, that means gathering, that children doom scrolling, that's when you use your finger on your phone and you just keep looking for interesting stories. When they do that for hours a day, causing widespread harm, it's a big problem. It says here, we need the equivalent of a seatbelt. That's the thing in the car that you have to wear that supposedly protects you. It says countries around the world are now taking bold action and our children may be left behind if we don't do something. The Prime Minister has said he's against simply banning phones for all under 16s, as he's being pushed to do, but he does say there are serious questions about who should be able to access what. Well, not everyone is in favor of this, but it looks like it's something which is going to be discussed. It says here, a government spokesman said there's no plans yet to back legislation for a ban on phones in schools, but this is something else which is being considered. If this bill goes through, many people will be very happy. But there's also another bill called the Online Safety Act, which is there, and it also touches upon children's safety. And it looks like they've already decided to raise the age of what they call internet adulthood from 13 to 16, which would have some effect on children accessing the internet. It would make bans in schools a legal requirement as well. So they are currently reviewing all of this, but there's no conclusion here as to how any of this would actually work. So there we are. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. So it does look like they're going to try to stop our kids using mobile phones. They haven't actually mentioned fake news or those kind of things in this article. They're saying they're just worried that the phones are a distraction for kids. But fake news and the spread of false information, whether it's locally about, a group of kids saying something about another kid at school, or whether it's worldwide problems and news propaganda, they're not really dealing with the problem. I think it would be much easier to teach all of us how to perhaps take your thoughts and be responsible for them. And that would have to come from some kind of principle that, well, nothing is really good or bad unless you make it that way. This idea of good man, bad man, I think is something which we inherited from our previous religions. As you know, Britain is no longer a religious country, but we're still left with this judgment. Oh, this person is a bad man because he did a bad thing. So we need to get away from that. And I'm really hoping that the future generations help us with that. Certainly, getting back to language learning, this idea of good teacher, bad teacher, good book, bad book, good YouTube clip, bad YouTube clip, is going to do nothing except to hold you back. If something appears before you like a situation, it might not be suitable for you. It may be something you disagree with. It may trample upon your principles, but that doesn't mean to say that it's bad and you have to go away and ensure the person is fired. It simply means that you don't agree. And not agreeing, again, is okay, but you don't have to condemn it as being bad. So I would say, if you haven't done so already, review my weekly lesson, because it's really important to get your head around this idea of what we've been discussing. Your English learning is going to be so much easier if you're not carrying the heavy weight of other people's thoughts about the course with you. And if you feel you are being negatively impacted by discussions which are taking place with students or even reviews on Facebook or whatever, then just choose to walk away from them and do it quickly before that web of deceit works its way into your mind, trying to claim that there's a altogether good person and altogether bad person on the scene of teaching and learning, because it doesn't work that way. We're all here to try to support each other, and it would be such a pity if some kind of negative thinking creeps in there to try to destroy that. There's a proverb in English. It says, "You are your own worst enemy." And that means that sometimes we don't need other people to create bad scenarios for us because we're quite capable of creating them ourselves. Many of you I speak with, you kind of lack self-confidence, you're kind of afraid to speak. And this all comes from this place that there's other people out there who are somehow better than you, or either that you're a bad person or someone else is bad and who's victimizing you. It's not always like that. Sometimes our own thoughts get too carried away with things. Well, I've said enough on the subject for today. That's it. I'll catch you all soon. Take care. Bye.